Yeah, so I was just going to touch on intellectual impairment or learning disability, guys. So this, I guess, we're covering anything that that affects intellectual functioning and learning. And I guess again, similar to CP, a learning impairment or an intellectual impairment could be real diverse and complex. So, yeah, there's a vast spectrum there. So I'm just going to run through potentially some of the challenges that might be there as a coach, as someone that's coming down, of an athlete that's coming down to the track for the first time, maybe with an intellectual impairment. So I guess the big one, and as we say, for anyone that's going to a new situation, new context for the first time, is certainly an anxiety. So an anxiety of learning new tasks, particularly someone with an intellectual impairment, particularly if they know that is something that they maybe struggle with, that's something to consider. And I guess hand in hand with that is like a comprehension of maybe tasks that are being asked of them, and finding stuff difficult. Potentially finding social situations a little bit trickier if there's an anxiety there, and certainly with new people and lots of people around. We know the track, particularly on a busy club night, can be quite an intimidating place if you've got sprints going in certain lanes, endurance running around the inside, throws happening on the infield. It's certainly worth noting, like someone with an intellectual impairment, as it with anyone, might be a little bit anxious and find that new kind of social situation a bit tougher. And similar with that, a potential lack of confidence in those new settings, as we just said. Certainly an anxiety around change, quite often, not always the case, but someone with a learning impairment might have other more complex needs, such as autism with that. And certainly in those situations, kind of changing things and having, things that are not in the routine that they would normally perceive, can be quite challenging. So actually providing like a stable context and something that is quite that is quite routine based is sometimes quite useful. Also worth noting, like articulating illness and injury, and particularly if that person is struggling to describe kind of sensation or how they're feeling about an injury, or maybe just too nervous to kind of say that they're hurt. I've certainly had a couple of instances with athletes with an intellectual impairment where physically their running gait has changed and they've been limping, but they certainly haven't flagged it up straight away that they're feeling hurt, or and it's just being aware of that, I guess. And just part of that, as with us all, sometimes we'll find coordination, and that's probably hand in hand with maybe comprehension of tasks. If there's some real difficult drills or difficult kind of challenges within the coordination could be a challenge. Opportunities with that, though, again, as we've said with any endurance sport, obviously increased fitness and well-being, certainly improve confidence, like socially being around a club environment and being in that group situation. As someone's confidence builds and they get used to their kind of training partners and their coach, we know an athletics club isn't only a place to train, but it's also a perfect social situation. And certainly when some of these athletes kind of get confident in that situation, we usually find it's their best place and their favorite place. As I kind of said, as we've touched on in terms of looking more performance-based, and you can see Owen, who's the current Paralympic champion from Tokyo of 1,500 meters in the T20 class, which is an intellectual impairment class. There is a pathway for male and female in the performance side over 1,500 meters on the track. But certainly there is, as with any, lots of competition, park runs, 5Ks, but actually if we're looking at that performance aspect, there is a 1,500 meters there in the Paralympic program, which is cool. Thinking about considerations for coaches, and we've probably touched on a few, but yeah, considerations for coaches with athletes with learning disability: appropriate running partners. So obviously if you're asking someone to go out and run a longer run on a route that they don't know, potentially if they're anxious and they're someone that struggles with kind of learning new routes and new tasks, finding the appropriate running and training partners for that person, someone that is empathetic and is aware of that person's kind of needs is going to be perfect. Similar to what we said around CP athletes and brain injury athletes, kind of simplifying some of those tasks of drills and some of those motor skills is really useful. And as Alasdair said, really working on the mechanics of running before we kind of layer on all that volume. And that's no different for any athlete. So actually just getting the basics right, particularly breaking stuff down for someone with intellectual impairments might be particularly useful. Reducing sensory feedback, so potentially training in a quieter place, like smaller numbers initially while that person gets confident. As we said, if they come to a busy track and they're not used to things, then that could be a real stressor. So actually just being aware of that sensory feedback and doing anything we can to minimize that, certainly while someone is getting used to the new situation. As any good coach will, clarity of instructions is really imperative, and almost checking in with that person, just making sure that they know what they're doing, because quite often no one wants to perceive that they didn't understand something, and they will go on and try and do it. But actually just being able to be aware and check in with that person a little bit more and make sure that they know what they're doing. As I've kind of mentioned, like repetition of routines and getting routines, clear routines for kind of training and race days. A lot of people with intellectual impairments that maybe have autism as part of that will love the routines and knowing exactly what they're doing. So actually having a really clear warm up and warm down that doesn't change too much, that a structure to a race day that they know how to follow, that is going to lessen anxiety and allow you to get the most out of their running and out of their time in the sport, really. Similarly to what I said around clarity of instructions, just clear descriptors. So when we're kind of doing our kind of standard endurance session of 1,000-meter repeats or 400s, how are we describing that to the person in terms of what pace they should be going? We sometimes know a challenge for someone with an intellectual impairment might be around pace judgment. So actually, if you're telling an athlete to run at 70 seconds per 400 in their reps, do they know what that means at this point in time if they're pretty new to the group? Do we need to be using percentages? Do you need to be describing it similar to a run at the same pace that you'd run at park run? Those kind of things. Just being really sensitive to those descriptors. And as I say, as we repeat stuff more and you repeat the same sessions and do that, then that person will get more comfortable and know what that means. But yeah, I guess that's all on clarity of instructions. Getting to know the person, and as we've said multiple times, it's the same as any coaching, getting to know what makes that person tick and when they're having a good day, when they're having a bad day, because if that person is a little bit shyer or maybe struggles to communicate potentially as well, which is often a challenge for someone with learning disabilities, they might not necessarily tell you if they're having a bad day, so you as the coach kind of taking the time to learn that, and that will take a little bit of time, but trying to work that person out so that you're in a better position to coach them and help them is always going to be key. And providing some positive feedback. There's going to be times when athletes get things wrong, and potentially if someone's unsure of cues and instructions that you're giving, this might happen a little bit, but actually being sure to always give a positive feedback to someone within the training group. And I guess that's no different for someone with learning disabilities, even more so, I guess. And as I've said, right throughout, just giving that athlete a voice, speaking to them and learning what they need and what they want to do, because they will be able to tell you as you get to know them how they're feeling, what they're wanting to do, and that should be a pretty good cue for you as a coach. And I think just allowing a little bit more time with things, a little bit more time to process instructions, a little bit more time with the warm up, a little bit more time to kind of get changed, all those kind of things. Put your spikes on, just being aware of that person and just giving a little bit more time to that will always kind of be useful.